So Jeremy, who is a musician and performer.
My name's Jeremy Sassoon. I am a singer and pianist. I'm from Manchester. I used to be a hospital doctor and psychiatrist. I then changed into music. I'm a big Manchester United fan. These are my colours. And I'm Jewish, and basically, in fact, I start a show that I do by saying that that's a very quick way and cheap way to get my Tinder profile out. So if anyone's interested.
Jeremy and I were talking about his new show, Music of Jewish Origin.
I was asked to do a show about Jewish music. It was a city called Leeds, which is where Dan is from. And I went away and I had to think about it. I thought of music in synagogues, and I thought of klezmer music, and I thought of horror music, and I thought, I just don't relate to this sort of music. It's really not my bag. I went out and did my gig that night and realised that all the songs I was playing were by Jewish songwriters. Paul Simon, Carole King. Suddenly realised there was a show. It's a 100-year celebration of the music of Jewish songwriters, starting in 1924 with Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin. And ending with Drake. Everyone in between, Bob Dylan, Randy Newman, Billy Joel. There were a couple of other things that stood out, more quirky angles to this show, one of which was the number of songs written by Jewish songwriters that were adopted eventually by English Premier League football teams. The more I went down this rabbit hole, the more songs I found, the more football clubs I found, and it became a feature in itself.
And in it, he has a piece where he talks about his problem with Richard Rodgers.
You all know Rodgers from Rodgers and Hart and Rodgers and Hammerstein, is that right? Yeah. So the problem I have with Richard Rodgers is that he wrote English Premier League football anthems. And to be fair to him, in the 1930s, he didn't realise he was writing English Premier League football anthems. And the problem that I have is not that he wrote them. It's just that he wrote them for the wrong teams.
The songs that he wrote are anthems for the two teams we do not support. So he's a Manchester United fan.
This is my colours.
I'm a Leeds United fan. And Richard Rodgers wrote Blue Moon, which is the Manchester City anthem.
I absolutely hate it. Dreadful tune. It was adopted by Manchester City as their anthem, which may have influenced my opinion on this.
So Blue Moon has nothing to do with its original context in the musical. It's purely a vehicle for singing about Manchester City, who play in blue.
But I can forgive him for that. But then 11 years later, in their famous musical Carousel, composed the song
You'll Never Walk Alone, which is the anthem for both Celtic in Scotland and also Liverpool. You'll Never Walk Alone gained more gravitas when Liverpool fans were involved in two separate disasters, the Heysel Stadium disaster and the Hillsborough disaster, in which football fans were killed. And so this song was played at commemorative services and as part of the kind of official citywide mourning for the people who died. When it's played now, it's reminiscent of some of the club's glories, it's reminiscent of some of the club's disasters. It really has very little to do with Carousel. Nevertheless, the mood of the music, the resonance, the catchiness of the melody really plays into how it's captured that imagination.
Would you be willing to play a couple bars of these songs?
This is sacrilege. I tried this before you came in. I tried this, and I just couldn't do it. I played the first note or two. I thought I'm going to do it for the documentary, and I felt sick, I felt nauseous, felt like it was treason to my people. It's against my religion. In England, football is a religion. It shares so many things in common with religion. It's incredible. I remember as a kid going to synagogue, the temple my parents wanted me to go to every Saturday, And then we went to the temple I wanted to go to, which was Old Trafford, the home ground of Manchester United, the holy sacred ground. Can you imagine synagogue without song, church without song, any sort of holy place without song? We talk about our gods and our legends. The back of my shirt here, my Manchester United shirt, is a number 7. Now this is sort of at Manchester United the holy number. This is the number that all the great legends wore. If you were a legend, you were given the number 7 shirt. George Best, Eric Cantona, Brian Robson, David Beckham.
We wondered why there were so many American Jewish musicians who had written songs that then became soccer anthems or theme tunes or different songs that were being used. It seems that there are a few different reasons for that. One is that the American Jewish community grew up in an incredibly intense urban environment and developed lots of important entertainment systems as a release valve. One of them was the American musical scene.
There's 2 sorts of singing at football. There's football chanting and there's football anthems. So chanting is a very tribal thing. It started quite a long time ago. These kind of songs came from hymns or songs that they sang in the military, Oh, when the saints go marching in. These are folk tunes, Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, or in our case, Glory, Glory, Man United. That's a different thing. And in fact, football chanting only started in the late 1960s, so it's a relatively recent thing. There were a couple of early football songs. One was by the famous classical composer Edward Elgar, who wrote a song for his beloved Wolverhampton Wanderers in 1890. Obviously, a lot of them have been very, very old tunes written in the 1920s and 30s or 50s, but they've sort of been revived.
The American musical scene is quintessentially Jewish, has many, many Jewish songwriters, but was not necessarily intended solely for a Jewish audience.
That's what makes a great pop tune, and you need to again look back in history, because it was the Jewish composers who started the pop business as such. They started writing pop tunes in the 1920s. To us, it's all our grandparents' music, but at that time, it was proper pop. Ragtime music was today's hip-hop. Pop music started with Tin Pan Alley, and especially in the case of Irving Berlin, he started the concept of the 3-minute hit. For him, it was all about just banging out hits, making it so catchy that everyone would sing it. That's what you need to become a football anthem. People hear it and they sing it all day, and they get to the football ground and each club will, one way or the other, adopt a song.
You want to have songs that capture a particular mood, a particular part of the plot, but that are at the same time deeply resonant. And resonant in both ways which are psychological, but also resonant in ways which are musical and are catchy.
Tin Pan Alley and the Brill Building, these were almost like factories of hits. There were just several, like dozens and dozens of rooms with a piano and a writing partnership, and they were under a huge amount of pressure to bang out the catchiest tunes. It was the same for Tin Pan Alley in the 20s and 30s as it was in the Brill Building, where Carole King, Neil Diamond. And so when people sing this in a football match in England, you get this. Sweet Caroline, good times never feel so good.
So Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond, that's been adopted by a number of soccer teams. Most recently in Britain, the English women's team won the European Championships, and it was their anthem, and so was played ad infinitum on British television.
It's no wonder, really, that so many of these songs are sung on the terraces.
They become perfect vehicles for resonant psychological moments of soccer games, and perfect for tens of thousands of people to be able to sing this tune, which is already in the culture, but which you can change the words for and allow you to customize for your own soccer team.
There are tunes that didn't become tribal. In other words, there were tunes that didn't just get adopted by individual clubs. There were tunes that became universally adopted. Que Sera Sera was one. So basically, there is a cup competition. It's called the FA Cup. It's a national competition in England.
And on the road to Wembley, which is where the final is held, teams or the fans for those teams sing Que Sera Sera.
Que sera, or maybe I will do the thing. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. Que sera, sera, que sera. Wembley, que sera, sera. It's a wonderful tune. It was a big hit for Doris Day.
The Jewish songwriters Jay Livingston and Ray Evans.
There's an example of 3 clubs in England that adopted the same song, which is Jeff Beck's Hi Ho Silver Lining. These 3 clubs are quite close to each other. 2 of them are in Birmingham, Aston Villa and Wolverhampton Wanderers, but also Sheffield Wednesday. Now, everyone knows the artist, but not the songwriter. Well, the songwriters were Larry Weiss and Scott English, 2 Jewish guys who wrote this brilliant hit, very catchy.
These get taken over as kind of what you might call now memes. They're vibes, they're moods that really explain a situation and actually get across a particular type of mood.
Bringing it even further up to date, there is a writer called David Baddiel. Now, David Baddiel is a very well-known Jewish personality in England, but has only recently become very big in America because of his book, Jews Don't Count. He wrote this book, fantastic book. But as well as that, many, many years ago, David Baddiel wrote a song for England together with a guy called Ian Broody of the band called the Lightning Seeds, who was also Jewish. And they wrote this song called It's Coming Home. And in a way, it was a kind of joke, because England sort of invented football. Football started in England, but we never win anything. Hundreds of years later, we're still waiting to win. We won the World Cup in 1966. About 60 years later, we still haven't won it since then. He wrote this tune in hope that it would be played and we would bring the World Cup back to England. It's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming.
Football's coming home, it's coming home, it's coming home.
Actually, David does very well from this. It's a bit like Christmas songs. You know, when Christmas comes around, everyone who wrote one makes a fortune.
Just in the same way that the Beatles write She Loves You rather than a specific name in order to make it universal, so the Jewish songwriters also wrote these songs to be universal anthems.
West Ham do this one. Well, shake it up, baby, now shake it, baby, twist and shout. I mean, everyone, again, remembers the artists, the Beatles, of course, and I think the Isley Brothers as well, but it was written by Bert Burns. He came from the Brill Building and Brill Building era. You've lost that love and feeling. Whoa, that love and feeling. Adopted by Nottingham Forest. Their main team, by Phil Spector, Cynthia Weil and Barry Mann, was the most radio-played song in the US in the whole 20th century.
And so I think it's entirely fitting that as entertainment becomes a global entity and as these soccer teams become global corporations, that they still go hand in hand with one another as they march on together, which is a soccer song not written by a Jewish composer.
The amazing thing is not that Jewish songwriters wrote these tunes or that football clubs adopted them. It's just in the context of the fact that only 2.4% of the American population is Jewish. It's only when you consider the numbers that you see the disproportionate nature.
So next time you're watching a game, either in the stands or on the TV, just listen to what the songs are that they're singing, because although the words are almost certain to have been written by people in the locale, the music for at least one of the songs that they sing during the 90 minutes of the game is going to have been written by an American Jewish composer.
Football's coming